On September 16, 2025, Hollywood lost more than a legend. It lost the beating heart of an era. Robert Redford, the man who made quiet defiance look effortless, took his final bow, and for a moment, the world of cinema felt smaller, quieter, almost fragile. What most people never saw was the man behind the curtain, a restless dreamer who almost abandoned acting before his breakthrough, a father who carried private heartbreak that would have broken most people, and a visionary who built Sundance so future storytellers could thrive. If Redford's performances ever stirred something in you, or if you believe stories like his deserve to be remembered, hit like as a quiet tribute and subscribe to keep these timeless Hollywood tales alive. By the end of this video, you'll see sides of him even lifelong fans never imagined. So what private struggles shaped the choices of this golden era rebel, and how did his quiet acts of defiance change film forever? Robert Redford didn't grow up anywhere near the bright lights of Hollywood. Born Charles Robert Redford Jr. on August 18, 1936, in Santa Monica, California, he was the son of a milkman and a homemaker at the tail end of the Great Depression. Fame wasn't even a dream in his world. It was something that belonged to other people. That quiet, working-class grit would become the backbone of everything he achieved. Yet young Redford wasn't the polished golden boy people might picture today. He was restless, mischievous, and sometimes reckless, expelled from high school for petty trouble that teachers thought would define him. Instead of crushing him, that outsider feeling planted the seeds of the rebel persona audiences would one day celebrate on screen. For a while, art, not acting, seemed like his escape. He earned a coveted scholarship for his painting talent, only to lose it after drinking too much and shirking responsibility. Humiliated and unsure of his future, he packed a small bag and wandered Europe, sketching landscapes and searching for purpose. Those lonely months gave him a perspective that no classroom could teach. Back home, a few persistent friends convinced him to give acting a shot. Redford enrolled at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York City, scraping by on pocket change and skipped meals. His earliest theater roles paid little, but the stage gave him something he hadn't felt before, a sense that his difference was a gift, not a flaw. If you've ever felt underestimated or written off, like the world decided your story too soon, Redford's early struggles might resonate with you. Drop a quick comment about a moment you proved people wrong, and let's see how many of us have had our own Redford-style turnarounds. Just as he started to glimpse a future in acting, a heartbreaking twist was waiting, one that would test his resilience and change the course of his life forever. Just when Robert Redford's future finally seemed to steady, life delivered a blow so crushing it would shadow him for years. In 1955, still a young man struggling to find his path, Redford married Lola Van Wagenen, a historian who would become both his partner and anchor. Together they began a family, but their first child, Scott, tragically passed away as an infant due to sudden infant death syndrome. The loss was devastating. Redford would later say that pain like that doesn't fade, it changes you at your core. For him, it became fuel, a reminder to fight for every chance life gives you. The experience hardened his resolve. He threw himself into acting with an intensity that caught people's attention. Early TV appearances in shows like Maverick and The Twilight Zone hinted at his quiet magnetism, but it was Broadway that made people stop and look twice. His performance in Barefoot in the Park was so charming and effortless that Hollywood couldn't ignore him anymore. When Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid hit theaters in 1969, Redford wasn't just a promising actor. He was a phenomenon. His chemistry with Paul Newman electrified audiences, and overnight, the kid who once doubted his place in Hollywood became one of its brightest stars. If you remember the first time you watched Butch Cassidy or The Sting, or maybe the first Redford film that ever made you fall in love with movies, share it in the comments. It's amazing how a single performance can stick with you for decades, and hearing your stories keeps legends like Redford alive for everyone watching. But Redford wasn't content to be just a pretty face on a poster. Even as the world adored him, he was quietly plotting something that would shake the industry and give a voice to the outsiders, just like he once was. By the late 1970s, Robert Redford could have coasted on stardom forever. He had the looks, the acclaim, and the kind of box office power that most actors only dream about. But behind the camera-ready smile was a man increasingly frustrated with Hollywood's obsession with big budgets and predictable stories. Redford believed film could be something more, raw, daring, and unfiltered, like the outsider he'd always felt himself to be. He'd already started flexing his creative muscle as a director, winning an Academy Award for his very first film behind the camera, Ordinary People, in 1981. But even that success didn't satisfy him. He saw brilliant voices struggling to break through, not because their stories lacked power, but because they didn't fit the Hollywood mold. So, in 1981, Redford made a bold move. He transformed a small ski town in Utah into a haven for storytellers, launching what would become the Sundance Institute and later the Sundance Film Festival. At first, it was a modest gathering, a handful of filmmakers sharing ideas in a rustic setting. But over time, it grew into a cultural force, reshaping independent cinema and giving platforms to voices Hollywood had ignored. Without Sundance, many groundbreaking films and directors, think Quentin Tarantino or Steven Soderbergh, might never have been discovered. It's wild to think how one person's decision to take a risk can ripple through generations. What's a movie you've seen that broke the rules and made you see film differently? Drop its name in the comments. You never know who you might inspire. And even while Redford was reshaping the industry, his personal life remained as complex and private as ever. Fame brought temptations, whispers, and challenges he never wanted the world to see. And some of those secrets wouldn't surface until much later. Even as Robert Redford was rewriting Hollywood's rulebook, his personal life was far from the perfect picture people imagined. His marriage to Lola Van Wagenen, which began in the shadow of youthful hope, had weathered decades of challenges, moving from small apartments to red carpets and through unimaginable grief after losing their first child. They raised 3 more children together, but by 1985, after 27 years of marriage, the couple quietly divorced. Redford rarely spoke about the split, preferring to keep heartbreak private. Despite his fame, Redford was known for fiercely guarding his personal world. Rumors occasionally swirled, brief romances linked him to glamorous women, whispered stories of flims, but he never chased tabloid attention. He seemed to understand that mystery was its own kind of power. Friends say his heart was always anchored in family, even when the spotlight threatened to consume him. In later years, Redford found love again with Sybil Zakars, a German-born artist who shared his passion for creativity and the outdoors. Their relationship was quieter, steadier, far removed from Hollywood drama. The two eventually married in 2009, proving that even after loss and heartbreak, second chances are possible. What's striking about Redford's journey is how carefully he chose what to reveal and what to protect. In a world where celebrities bear everything for clicks, he stayed dignified, guarding pieces of himself that belonged to no one else.
Do you think today's stars should protect their private lives the way Redford did? Or is openness part of the price of fame now? Share your thoughts below. Your perspective might surprise someone else reading. But Redford's story wasn't just about relationships or career milestones. There was another side to him, his tireless fight for the environment and justice that made him more than a movie legend. It made him a voice for something bigger.
Robert Redford wasn't content to just play heroes on screen. He wanted to be one when the cameras stopped rolling. Long before environmentalism became mainstream, Redford was raising his voice for the planet. He campaigned tirelessly to protect wilderness areas, speaking out against reckless development and fighting to preserve the American West he loved so deeply. Through his work with groups like the Natural Resources Defense Council, Redford took on powerful interests, risking his Hollywood clout to speak for places and people often overlooked. He used his fame not as a shield, but as a megaphone, proving that influence means little if you don't use it for something bigger than yourself. His activism wasn't limited to nature. Redford championed Native American rights and political reform, lending his voice to causes that weren't always popular. It would have been easy to stay quiet and protect his image, but that was never his way. What's incredible is how his on-screen roles mirrored his real-life convictions. In films like All the President's Men and The Candidate, he exposed corruption and questioned authority. Off-screen, he did the same, reminding audiences that art and action could walk hand in hand. Is there a moment you remember when a celebrity used their platform for good and it changed how you saw them? Share your story in the comments. You never know whose perspective you might shift. But even as Redford earned respect as an activist and artist, he never stopped surprising people. In his later years, he would reveal decisions and personal reflections that showed just how deeply he understood the fleeting nature of fame and legacy. In the twilight of his career, Robert Redford made a choice that stunned Hollywood. He announced he was stepping away from acting. After decades of captivating performances, he admitted he wanted to leave on his own terms, without waiting for the spotlight to fade. In interviews, he spoke with a kind of serene honesty, saying he'd told every story he needed to tell. But stepping back didn't mean disappearing. Redford continued nurturing Sundance, quietly funding projects for first-time filmmakers, and ensuring the next generation of storytellers had a stage. Even in retirement, he was shaping the future of cinema, far from red carpets and headlines. He also opened up in ways fans rarely saw, reflecting on the fragility of time, the pain of personal losses, and the unexpected beauty of a life well lived. He spoke of mistakes, triumphs, and the hope that his work would outlast him. Moments like these remind us that even icons face the same doubts and decisions we all do. They're a powerful nudge to appreciate the voices who shaped us while they're still here. Was there a Robert Redford moment, maybe a line, a film, or even his activism that left a mark on you? Share it in the comments. Your story might inspire someone else. And while Redford may have stepped away, the echoes of his choices, his films, and his courage to challenge norms still ripple through Hollywood today. But as we look back on his incredible journey, there's one last revelation, one final, little-known detail that puts everything about Robert Redford into a completely new light. Hidden beneath the fame and the polished Hollywood image was something few ever realized about Robert Redford: his lifelong love for painting. Long before the cameras ever found him, he was a quiet art student sketching in small studios, believing his future was on canvas, not film. even at the height of his career, he'd retreat to his studio, brush in hand, to reconnect with the simplicity that first gave him joy. Many believe this private passion grounded him, keeping him humble even as the world placed him on a pedestal. It's a detail that changes how you see him, isn't it? The world knew him as the Sundance Kid, the political firebrand on screen, the fearless activist. But to himself, he was still that young painter, searching for meaning in every stroke. When you think of Robert Redford now, his films, his activism, his quiet moments of honesty, what stands out most to you? Drop your thoughts in the comments. It's those shared memories and perspectives that keep stories like his alive. And if Redford ever made you laugh, made you think, or reminded you of the power of standing for something, hit like as your quiet nod to him. Subscribe for more timeless Hollywood stories that deserve to be remembered, because the legends fade only if we let them. Robert Redford may have left the stage, but the light he carried, on screen and off, still burns bright. Somewhere, maybe, there's a half-finished painting on a quiet studio wall, a reminder that even the greatest icons are, at their core, dreamers like us.